attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our webinar on Generation UCAN and running. I'm Varun Sriram. I'll be your host tonight. I'm joined, as always, by Seth Bronheim, our registered dietitian. Seth, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Varun. Just got done with the workout, feeling good.
All right. So today we want to talk about a subject that, if it's not top of mind for runners, it definitely should be, and that is how to fuel your body for your runs. It's something that, as we've traveled around to various expos, various running groups, fueling is certainly something that there's a lot of information about that, and there's also a lot of misinformation out there. That there's a lot of things that runners have done traditionally as well that may not be exactly the most beneficial thing for you to do in terms of what you put into your body to fuel a run or to fuel a workout. So let's start with more of an overall nutrition discussion, Seth, and take a look at the foods that runners are used to consuming prior to a run, prior to a workout. We've got your things like your bagels, your bananas, your convenient energy bars, and there is an issue going on when you choose to fuel your runs with quick and convenient foods like that. Seth, as the dietitian among the two of us, I'll let you speak to that. What's going on with these traditional carb-based foods that we eat before a run?
Well, the first problem is that, they're tough on the stomach, so you have to really plan out an hour before, if you're going to have this. But once these carbohydrates are digested, they're digested rapidly, and the calories are broken down rapidly in your intestines, and you flood your body with carbohydrate calories. So during a run, you're mainly going to be burning the carbs you just ate and rely on carbohydrates for fuel and not be really allowing your body to burn fat. But the other problem is that as you burn through carbohydrates too rapidly, your blood sugar, which we'll get into a second on how significant it is, declines during your exercise and it doesn't stay steady.
So, Seth, you teased that a little bit, but let's talk about blood sugar. What is blood sugar? First of all, why does the average athlete, the average runner, need to even care about their blood sugar levels?
So basically, at rest, let's say when you wake up in the morning or just at rest, you have around 5 grams of sugar circulating through your bloodstream. Now, to go back to ninth grade biology, the reason you have a bloodstream is that it transports nutrients and it's basically a delivery system for the body. So you have sugar circulating throughout your bloodstream, and you want to keep a steady rate of sugars floating through your bloodstream, not too much at once, because if too much enters the body at once, you have a spike and then you have a rapid decline because it's an emergency signal if sugar levels get too high in the bloodstream, and the body senses that and wants to bring your blood sugar and your sugar levels back down. So it's so important to have even sugar levels so it's balanced.
I was chatting, recently with the dietitian of the Los Angeles Clippers, and she was saying that the way she put it is the key to steady energy is having steady blood sugar. And as we go on in this discussion today, you'll hear us come back a lot to that idea of steady blood sugar, but really maintaining that level of blood sugar, and as Seth mentioned, not flooding it with a lot of unnecessary calories. That's really the ideal feeling of that steadiness and that evenness without those highs and lows. And what's interesting is even foods like bananas that we perceive as healthy, which certainly in a lot of contexts a banana is a very healthy food, but something like a banana with 20 to 25 grams of sugar, depending on the size of the banana, is going to cause a significant rise in your blood sugar levels. You're going to have a rapid entry of calories and carbs into the system, and it is going to throw things a little bit haywire. So, the banana is such a common food for runners to have before they go out and exercise, but really not what you want to ideally do if you're fueling your body to maintain steady energy levels. Seth, the negative implications of those highs and lows in blood sugar. We hear it here on the screen, but for any of the folks that are joining us via phone, can you talk through the implications of having a rapid rise and decline in blood sugar levels?
Yeah. So read that one more time, Byron.
Said, can you just talk about the the positive, the negative consequences of having a rapid rise and decline in your blood sugar levels?
So the main thing is that when sugars rush the body too quickly, you flood your body with the sugars. Bro, you still have those samples, man? And I do. Oh, hold on. Hold on. I do. Sorry. Okay. The body says, I have all this sugar in my blood. Don't burn fat, burn the sugar first. So what happens is that all the sugar enters your bloodstream and you stop your body from burning fat. And that's a huge problem because when what goes up must come down. And during a run, anybody who's had a gel during a run, really just, understands what happens when they feel that gel in their body and they feel that decline. So that's the big problem. And what happens when your blood sugar crashes is that your blood sugar, when you crash, stress hormones rise to raise your blood sugar back up. That's putting extra stress on the system.
Seth, you handle that like a true pro. I know you're at a Lifetime Fitness gym right now, and somebody walked into the room. So appreciate you trucking along right there. So, we've talked a little bit about blood sugar, and want to give you guys a quick overview of how this all relates to UCAN and the uniqueness of the product. So, Generation UCAN, what's really unique about the product is the carbohydrate that we use. We call it SuperStarch, and we'll talk about in a moment what exactly the SuperStarch is. But what's truly unique about the SuperStarch is the origins. The carbohydrate was originally created with sports and fitness not even on the radar. What you're looking at on the screen is our founder's son, Jonah. Jonah has a very rare blood sugar disease where he can't produce glucose, can't produce energy like the rest of us. So when most of us sleep at night, what's going on in the body is that your liver releases glucose into your bloodstream, and that's what feeds you throughout the night, and it keeps your blood sugar nice and stable. Now, kids like Jonah have a genetic defect where they can't do that. So throughout the night, they have severe lows in blood sugar, what's referred to as hypoglycemia, and they get this to a dangerous level where if they're not fed every 2 hours around the clock, then it's really problematic. So previously, Jonah's parents were feeding him just regular cornstarch every 2 hours around the clock, day and night. So 12 times a day just to keep his energy levels up because cornstarch has relatively slower burn compared to most carbohydrates. So it was something that Jonah could take several doses of throughout the day, and it wouldn't overwhelm his system with a bunch of calories. Now, obviously, that wasn't an ideal lifestyle. Waking up, setting 4 alarm clocks to 5 alarm clocks around the house to make sure that you wake up every 2 hours to feed your kid. It's not something that's maintainable long term. So there's actually a fascinating documentary on YouTube called Life by the Clock, where it details the dilemmas of these parents. But Jonah's family, in search of a better way, started aggressively looking at research for essentially the world's best carbohydrate. In this context, when we say the world's best carbohydrate, we mean something that would trickle in very slowly and keep Jonah's blood sugar levels stable over a very long period of time. And they were looking for something that would keep him stable throughout the night so that at least at night wouldn't have to keep waking up and feed their son. As we've already talked about previously, that stabilizing your blood sugar levels is the key to maintaining steady energy. We'll get into more of that, but it's a big aspect of it. So you can sort of start to piece together what exactly it is that UCAN is doing in the body and from the origins of it. But let's keep going with Jonah for a minute. So eventually they found SuperStarch, this carbohydrate, which is unique to UCAN, which is what I'm going to let Seth describe here in a second. But now Jonah, with SuperStarch, takes a large dose of it before he sleeps at night and is able to maintain his blood sugar levels throughout the night. So it was really a life-saving creation for Jonah's family and for Jonah. But Seth, why don't you tell us what exactly the SuperStarch is and what makes it so unique?
So, superstarch, our carbohydrate, we start with non-GMO corn, and it's simple, a natural cooking process. Over the course of 40 hours, we heat it and let it dry. There's no enzymes or chemicals used because our first customers were 2-year-old babies. So, as Varn was talking about, for 8 years, the top carbohydrates, the top carbohydrate researchers, they were looking for the best carbohydrate to stabilize blood sugar longest in those young kids. So trying barley's, tapiocas, rices, and wheats, turned out that our non-GMO corn, with our patented process, cooking it over the course of 40 hours, it elongates the carbohydrate. So it's broken down nice and slowly out of your intestine into your bloodstream. Now, going back to where we're talking about issues with carbohydrates, bananas and cereals and energy bars, is the carbohydrates are broken down rapidly in the intestine, and it enters the body rapidly. So we're slowly and steadily breaking down and slowly and steadily entering the body at a steady rate to keep energy very even. And again, it's non-GMO. It's gluten-free. We just wrote a review of Amy Yoda Begley, an Olympic runner's favorite gluten-free snack, was talked about in the Gluten-Free Edge, a new book. And it's clinically proven. We had a study published in the Nutrition Journal at the University of Oklahoma, and we'll take you through some of the science.
So let's take a look. We talked about your bagels and your bananas and some of the issues going on from an energy standpoint and a fat burning standpoint with those common runner foods. And this applies as well for a lot of your sports nutrition products. Your first generation of sports nutrition products was using simple sugars as their carbohydrate source. So you have fructose, glucose, sucrose. That's what was delivering the energy. Your newer products use something called maltodextrin. So if you look at virtually every gel or chew or drink powder out there, and look in the ingredient label, one of the first ingredients you'll likely see with the newer products, your hammers, accelerades, is this carbohydrate called maltodextrin. Seth, what is maltodextrin? Because it's something that we're going to talk about a lot here in a moment as we take folks quickly through our clinical trial with the SuperStarch. So what is maltodextrin?
So maltodextrin it's a slight improvement toward your simple sugars. It's a slightly longer chain carbohydrate, a higher molecular weight. So, for example, simple sugars like glucose, fructose, sucrose, they have smaller molecular weights. Maltodextrin it has a molecular weight of 1,000 grams per mole, whereas sugars have around 180 grams per mole. So it was really created as a slight improvement to your simple sugars, because it would move through the stomach a little bit quicker, and that's why it's in a lot of your popular gels today.
So when Seth talked about the molecular weight, the reason he was bringing that up is because from a science standpoint, your larger molecules like a maltodextrin will pass through the stomach quicker, and to not feel that much as much of that GI distress when you're exercising, you want high molecular weight carbs because those go through the stomach quicker than your simple sugars. So many of you folks who started out drinking Gatorade and then moved over to some of the gels may have noticed that compared to a Gatorade, the gels felt better in your stomach, and that is in part because of the molecular weight. But even with a lot of these carbohydrates, whether it's your maltodextrin or your simple sugar, like we talked about, they enter the system very quickly. You spike your blood sugar. You get that whole up and down effect where you'll have to keep refueling every 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, the reason you take a gel in that frequency is because of what's occurring with your blood sugar levels. It's going up and then it's coming down rapidly and you have to redose. We also talked about this idea of when you get a rapid rush of calories and your sugar levels rise quickly, your body's burning that sugar instead of burning fat. There's a little bit more that goes into that with this hormone called insulin in the body, which is really the key to controlling your ability to burn fat. Your insulin levels will dictate that, but we'll address that in just a moment. And there's also with your maltodextrins and your sugars, when we're in our 20s and 30s, we may not think or care about it so much because we're more focused, a lot of us, on performing, but having these dramatic highs and lows in blood sugar for long-term health is really not at all what you want to do. It could lead to such conditions as prediabetes, metabolic syndrome. So you really, just from a health standpoint, want to maintain and manage your blood sugar levels without having these dramatic swings. It's definitely beneficial long-term. So we've got a little bit of context of maltodextrin, and we gave you that because we want to really talk about, from a science standpoint, the clinical validation of UCAN and how SuperStarch is completely different. I also want to take this time to note that we do want to answer your questions. So some of you folks have emailed us questions prior to the session. I've got all those with me, and we're definitely going to get through those. But anyone else who has any specific questions, either on the science or on UCAN usage, please feel free to ask them to us in the chat, because we are here today and tonight for you folks to make sure that you get the most out of this. So let's take a look at the maltodextrin versus SuperStarch. What we're looking at right here is a graph with blood sugar. Seth, I'll let you take it from there.
So as we were talking about our carbohydrate, SuperStarch, it's that longer chain. It's with that heat and moisture process, it's dripping into the body slowly and steadily. So if you see our blood sugar curve, this red line, this is measuring your blood sugar versus time. And you see we're giving you a steady release, little bits of energy over time, matching the rate your brain and your muscles need fuel. As you see, compared to the maltodextrin, like in a lot of your popular sports products, it comes into the body rapidly, and then it breaks down rapidly, and you use it rapidly. So the big thing here is that it's coming into the body at an even and steady rate, and the brain only needs around 5 to 8 grams of glucose an hour. It doesn't need 30 grams that are in your typical bowl of cereal or in a gel or half a bagel. So you need smaller amounts of carbs over time, steadily releasing, not all at once. And so this is, over the course of time, and that's why, a lot of folks, when they have a serving of our product, and Varn, I know I'm skipping ahead, but they can run between 8 and 15 miles on a single packet because of how efficient and steadily it releases into the body, so they don't have to rely on other sources of sugar-based fuels.
Seth talked, and he teased this a little bit about the brain, and it, for any of us who exercise or run, it's oftentimes as much mental as it is physical. I mean, those last few miles in a marathon are very much about having the mental drive to push through, even when you don't feel like exercising. When you think, hey, I'm going to cut my run short, it's a lot of it is about just that mental willpower and the mind forcing the body to keep going. And when you have these fluctuations in blood sugar levels, that's sometimes where you may feel that brain fog, or this term bonking has become so popular amongst runners and endurance sports. A lot of times when you bonk, it's not a physical feeling. It's a mental feeling. Your body could keep going, but your mind is completely fried and won't allow your body to keep going. And that's frequently tied into these swings in glucose, or the fact that your blood sugar is declining significantly and your brain isn't being fed steady energy or steady glucose. So maintaining blood sugar levels not only is beneficial for the physical energy that you feel, but it's also going to benefit the mental energy that you feel. The next thing that we're going to talk about from a science standpoint, before we really get into your questions and how to use UCAN for a lot of specific situations, is this whole idea of UCAN enhancing your ability to burn fat. And this, in all of our research, was perhaps what top nutritionists and dietitians and carbohydrate experts found to be the most significant aspect of SuperStarch and of UCAN. So Seth, let's break this down in a way that's easy to understand. So start with the hormone insulin. What is insulin? When does the body produce it, and what's its function?
So your body always has a low level of insulin in the body, and it's called your basal rate, your baseline rate. So what raises insulin, and what is insulin? Insulin's a hormone in response to your blood sugar rising. So when you eat a bowl of cereal, when you have a half a bagel, when you have carbohydrates like we talked about before that raise your blood sugar rapidly, once your blood sugar goes up, as I said, it's an emergency signal. So the hormone insulin comes into the body, and it basically says, hey, store that blood sugar, that sugar in the blood away. We need it to get back to lower levels. So that's really insulin's job. It's to bring your blood sugar back down. But insulin has a second function in the body. It tells the body to stop burning fat and to start storing it. And this is the main thing, because as we're talking about, once you have these carbohydrates and you spike your blood sugar from the carbohydrates entering the body quickly, insulin says, hey, you got all this sugar in your blood. Don't burn fat, burn the sugar first. And that's what insulin does. It tells your body to store it away and to prevent your body from burning your own body fat. So it was our research, we did this trial at the University of Oklahoma, and these were trained athletes hooked up to metabolic carts, intravenous blood draws, getting tested every 15 minutes. And what we showed is that their insulin levels get completely flatlined. They stay very low throughout. And then we also kept them hooked up to metabolic carts for an extra 90 minutes to test how the carbohydrate affected in recovery. And again, you see small rise in insulin and very steady.
So again, to reiterate what Seth said, when insulin is low, you can keep burning fat. When insulin levels rise, like with a lot of your traditional carbohydrates that cause the blood sugar spike, so your maltodextrins, your simple sugars, your bagels, your bananas, you're not spending your workout burning as much fat as possible. Now, this is significant for two reasons. The first being if you're a beginner runner, if you're running, with a fitness goal in mind, and you really are running as a way to maintain or lose weight, you want to spend more of your run burning fat. So you want to have insulin low as much as possible. Otherwise, it's going to be counterproductive. It's been so interesting as Seth and I have been the last 5 weeks, been at a different marathon expo every weekend, culminating with New York City this last weekend. And I can't tell you how many folks, as we've discussed their marathon training with them, and they've shared some of their feedback, not on UCAN but just on training in general, have told us that they have actually gained either 3 or 4 pounds as they've trained for marathon, or not lost any weight at all. And for a lot of them, it's shocking because training for a marathon represents a significantly higher amount of exercise than they would normally do.
Lauren, I hate to interrupt you. That's so funny because I was at one of the Lifetimes today, and the personal training department head was training for a marathon, and he told me that his last marathon that he used, which was without UCAN, he actually gained 8 pounds, and he couldn't believe it. This time, he said that he's down 10 pounds since he's been training, and he's doing a training program 4 months out with various mileage throughout the week. So that was the first thing he told me once I popped into the club today. That's coincidental, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty significant. And really the reason that that's happening is people are sucking back so many calories during their run because their blood sugar is going up and down, and they're spending a lot of those long runs, those 16 to 18 mile runs where they should be burning a ton of fat. They're spending it just burning those excess sugars and excess carbs rather than burning fat. And when you have those swings in blood sugar at the end of the workout, it's going to manifest itself where you're going to feel that ravenous hunger. You're going to go home and eat, an entire bowl of pasta along with that garlic bread, or whatever it may be, because those swings in blood sugar cause you to crave more sugar and crave more carbs. So it's pretty fascinating from that standpoint, from just a weight maintenance standpoint or a weight loss standpoint, a fat loss standpoint, what we've seen when folks train with UCAN and spend more of that workout burning fat. For those of you folks who are already very lean and couldn't care less about burning fat, I mean, unfortunately there are a lot of you guys out there. A lot of us want to burn fat, but there's some folks that don't care at all. And the benefit of burning more fat for those folks and for anybody is that fat is an unbelievable source of energy. So a gram of fat gives you 9 calories of energy. A gram of carbohydrate gives you 4 calories of energy. So you're getting more than double the energy when you can use fat for fuel versus just using carbohydrate for fuel. So even from a performance standpoint, and the other thing is that we all have, even the leanest people, those of you who are with us either in New York City or in New Jersey, along with Meb Keflezighi, the Olympic marathoner on Monday. Meb is an extremely lean guy, 3 to 4% body fat. Even Meb has 15 to 20,000 calories of stored fat that he can use for fuel. So sometimes you'll hear people say, "Yeah, but I'm so lean, I don't have enough fat to burn." And there is nobody in the world that doesn't have fat that they can use and access for fuel. Conversely, we can only.
Lauren,
Go ahead, Seth.
I'll tell you, when we're talking about Meb and we're talking about running, I mean, you ever wonder what the physiological adaptation is to running? How do you get to become a better endurance? And the main thing is that in your muscle cell, your mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, again, going back to 9th grade biology, it gets larger and it upregulates enzymes that want to mobilize and burn fat and spare your carbohydrate, your glycogen, so you don't bonk during exercise. And the body wants to basically break down fat, have it circulate in the bloodstream, and send it to the muscle cells to burn it. And that is the adaptation to running. And that's why so many runners are finding that they have better endurance, they can stay at higher thresholds and have better power, during their training and obviously their performance.
So when we talk about, that's a great point, Seth, and then so I think that illustrates exactly what I was getting into. But Seth, you said it a lot better. It's burning fat is good for fitness. Burning fat is good for performance. So UCAN is a carbohydrate that allows your body to freely burn fat. And Seth, I mean, you can speak to this. How unique of an aspect is that of a carbohydrate? I mean, are there a ton of carbohydrates out there that are going to allow you to freely burn fat?
Well, that's why this is so unique, and it really goes back to its origins. Because when you're looking for a carbohydrate to keep someone who can't even make his own blood sugar, keep himself having stable blood sugar, I mean, that's what UCAN was originally meant for, and it's that same concept being used for exercise where you're burning a ton of calories. Your cells need a lot of energy, and if you only had carbs available, your blood sugar would simply decline throughout your exercise. And the ability to burn fat means you're not burning as many carbohydrates, and that means you can spare those carbs for the organs that need it, like your brain, and keep a nice amount of carbohydrates stored in the muscle cell to save it deeper into your training or later into a long distance run.
So for those of you who are a little bit familiar with UCAN, you know the format, of course, but I did just occur to me that there may be some folks in here that haven't used the product before. So right now, what UCAN is, the format, it's a powder that you mix with water. It's something that you certainly drink 30 minutes prior to a workout. If you're going longer, you want to drink it during your run as well, which we'll talk about. We already have some questions about how to carry it, which we'll definitely get into. And then it works very well for recovery as well. So quickly to review the benefits of UCAN, you get that steady feeling of energy. You don't have the high and lows. You don't have the spike and crash in your glucose levels. It's all just about that steady feeling. So when you drink UCAN before your run, you're not going to feel jittery or hyped or like you want to run through a wall. It's going to be more that feeling of steadiness. And when you'll really notice it is 30 minutes in, 45 minutes in, when you feel good, you feel like you can keep going, you feel like you can push yourself. And that feeling extends with one serving of UCAN up to 90 minutes to 2 hours without needing any other fuel. We talked at length about the idea of keeping insulin levels low and enhancing your ability to burn fat. So that's a huge aspect of UCAN and what it does. We had a lot of folks make this analogy of UCAN turning your body into a hybrid car, allowing you to burn a mix of fat and carbs for fuel, which is really what's ideal. You want to have a steady you want to have glucose entering your bloodstream very steadily and keeping you stable, which will allow your body to freely burn fat. So you're getting that perfect mix. Mentioned the molecular weight of carbohydrates when we were talking about maltodextrin. So to put that into context, UCAN is 5,000 times the molecular weight of maltodextrin. So we talked about molecular weight with maltodextrin as an improvement over your simple sugars, and that allowed maltodextrin to be easier on the stomach. Well, 5,000 times the weight of maltodextrin, imagine how easy UCAN is on the stomach. If you've used it, it's almost like 10 minutes after you drink it, you won't even feel it in your gut. It passes through the stomach rapidly and it digests in the intestines. It is a completely natural energy source. SuperStarch, again, it's non-GMO corn. We just cook it with heat and water. Now, it's not something you could go into your kitchen and do. It is a patented process. We do it over the course of 40 hours. So it's a very specific process, but all that's being added to the non-GMO cornstarch is heat and water. So it had to be natural because it was originally created for young kids, for babies. And then finally, UCAN, it's a food. So you want to think of it almost like oatmeal, less processed than oatmeal, and it's a nutrition facts label, not a supplement. So it is something that the pro football teams. Actually, it's a funny story. The New England Patriots, when they buy the product, they buy it with the budget they use to buy steaks, not the budget they use to buy supplements. And finally, it is gluten free, as we talked about. So let's talk about the formats and really get into some of the usage questions. And the you know what? Well, let's start with the question first, Seth. James has a question about the best way to carry or well, actually, you know what? We'll get to James' question in a minute. Actually, it makes more sense to talk through this aspect first. So there's two versions of the product. Um, there's our sports drink mix, which is the SuperStarch carb plus electrolytes, and there's the protein enhanced drink mix, which is the SuperStarch plus protein and electrolytes. Seth, why don't you tell folks what the difference is between the two and when and how you would use both of them?
So, I mean, they both contain the same amount of the superstarch carbohydrate. So, if those folks, want to use protein before they exercise, a lot of people like that. The protein helps curb hunger in the stomach, and also if those people are prone during a long run or even a shorter run to muscle loss, or they want to preserve their muscle mass, they like a little bit of protein in the body. Um, the protein enhanced version is really for those who want to make it more like a mini meal. But I will tell you, I've had both versions for a morning run, a 6 mile run in the Central Park Loop, and they both give me the same amount of energy. But if you are prone to morning hunger, you might like the protein enhanced version if you're going to do a morning run. Um, and the fruit flavored versions, the cranberry raspberry, lemonade, pomegranate, blueberry, and simply as it says, the superstarch plus the electrolytes. So if you've had lunch at 12 o'clock, you're going for a 4 or 5 o'clock run, you've had enough protein at lunch, you can simply have just the fruit flavored version, 30 minutes before you exercise. We have a lot of folks keeping a tub at work now. We sell the product in tubs, and they have a scoop, as they're ending work, and by the time they get home and put on their shoes and socks, it's been around 30 minutes if they have a short commute, obviously, and they're out the door. So, it's more about personal preference, but and some folks are just biased and love our chocolate flavor, so they use the chocolate protein enhanced version.
So
The
I think you mentioned this, Seth, but just from an energy standpoint, so using the protein pre-run versus the sports drink mix pre-run, really from an energy standpoint, there isn't much of a difference. It would be more dependent on the length of your run and when you had eaten that last meal in terms of hunger. Isn't that right?
That's exactly correct. Yes, Varn.
All right. So the James's question. In terms of basic usage, you want to take a packet of UCAN, mix it with 8 to 12 ounces of cold water, and drink the entire thing 30 minutes before your run. It's not, even though you mix it with water, don't think of it as like an electrolyte drink or a hydration drink, like a traditional sports drink that you're carrying and sipping on slowly throughout the course of your run. That's not the most effective way to use it. So it's really your pre-workout snack. This is replacing, again, that bagel, that energy bar, that banana, and you're getting it all in your system 30 minutes before you run. Now, one packet, either 120 or 220 roughly calories, should last you for 90 minutes to 2 hours without needing any other fuel. So that's if you think about that calorically, a gel with 100 calories is lasting you 30 to 40 minutes. The UCAN is lasting you, twice or three times as long in some cases because the calories are very efficient. They're released steadily, and so they're going to last you for a longer period of time. And you're also, with UCAN, able to tap into your own fat and use your internal calories, so you don't need as many external calories. Now, for those of you folks who are going longer than 2 hours, people who are training for a marathon, you ultra runners, you'd want to take UCAN additional times during your run as well. So our basic rule of thumb is when you're training with UCAN, figure out how long one packet lasts for you. So if you say, hey, a packet lasts me 2 hours without feeling like I need anything else, then what you want to do when you refuel with UCAN during your run is to take that next serving every 90 minutes. And we say 90 minutes because it takes about 20 or so minutes for the carbohydrate to break down. Remember, this is a slower breakdown process. It's not entering your system rapidly. So you want to give it time to I guess, kick in, and you don't want to take it right in that moment where you feel like I need something right away. So, Seth, let's address James' question. James wants to know the best ways to carry UCAN or mix UCAN when you're having it during a run. Since we're on that topic, what would you say?
So there's a few different things to do. It's really for exercise over 2 hours. So this would mainly be like really longer distances. So you might do, so there's a few things. You could take a Fuel Belt bottle, a 10-ounce bottle, and put a serving in that. Most folks put two packets in there, and they concentrate it. And for example, if you're going to do a marathon, they might load before, have a serving before the run starts, then have half that fuel belt bottle, 5 ounces at mile 10, and half that fuel belt bottle at mile 17. And we say that because that's been our general starting point for marathons. The other option besides the fuel belt is we've had people basically taking a Ziploc bag, making UCAN into their own little gel with an ounce or two of water, putting it with a spoon into a Ziploc bag, rolling the bag up, and putting a rubber band around it, and then they're biting it off and squeezing it out. We have extremely creative customers. I mean, I know, Varn, you said one customer figured out a way to put it into a small travel shampoo bottle. So
Yeah, she emailed me last week, and she ran the Marine Corps marathon. She took actually, and this is something else we'll talk about. She took 2 packets of UCAN before the race. That got her up to mile. Well, in her training, that had gotten her up to mile 18. So during the Marine Corps marathon, what she did is she took the 2 before. At mile 16, again about 20-ish minutes before she needed it, she had a packet of UCAN, a full packet, mixed with 4 ounces of water. She had it in a travel shampoo bottle, which she had stuck in her sports bra, and she just chugged it down in between mile 16 and 17, and that was all the nutrition she took for the entire 26.2 miles. So pretty amazing. Really simplified things for her, just having to refuel once instead of the I think we were polling a lot of folks as we were at marathons, asking them how many gels they might take in a given marathon, and we're pretty shocked to hear people saying they're taking sometimes as many as 6 to 8 gels. So 800 calories being replaced by 240 or more than that. Sorry, about 360 total calories, including what they're taking pre-race. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that if you could feel a better feeling of steadiness and a better feeling of energy?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the other opportunity in terms of James' question, you know um, I think it's simply to load before and not have to worry about it. I think that's really only for longer distance runs. You can load before with 2 packets or 3 scoops, and you'd be surprised how long you can last.
So that's what you want to play around with in your training. If the 1 packet of UCAN lasts you 90 minutes to 2 hours, it's not necessarily if you take 2, you're going to get 3 to 4 hours out of it. I mean, some people do, but that's something that we definitely recommend trialing out, with trial and error when you're training. So when you're taking the 2 packets of UCAN prior to a run, you could do it in a couple different ways. Some folks like to actually stagger it. And so for the marathon, some folks may do the protein UCAN, almost treat it like their breakfast and have it an hour and a half to 2 hours before the run. And then 30 minutes before the run, they may have the sports drink mix without the protein. So they're getting the 2 packets of UCAN in them pre-run, but they're not, they're not having it all at once. And folks have told us that doing it that way has lasted them up to 18 to 20 miles without needing anything else. You have your other folks that would just prefer to, eat whatever they want to for their breakfast, a few hours in advance of the race or a few hours in advance of a long run, and then have the 2 packets of UCAN simultaneously. So mix them up together and have it just 30 to 45 minutes before a run, similar to how they would have the 1 packet. And when you do this, what a lot of folks will do, because they don't want to mix each packet with 10 to 12 ounces of water and then be drinking 20 plus ounces of water before they run. The obvious thing being, because you're going to be in the bathroom, a few miles into your run, it doesn't matter how much water you mix UCAN up with. We talked about making it a gel and concentrating it. So water is really just to give you the desired taste and consistency that you seek. So if you're doing the 2 packets before, it's perfectly fine to mix it up a little thick. Just do the 2 packets with 8 to 10 ounces of water and have that before. And again, the advantage of the 2 instead of the 1 is that it might prevent you needing to refuel at all during your run. I mean, if you're going out and training for 2.5, 3 hours, you take 2 packets before, you might not have to worry about anything at all during. So you could just focus on that run instead of thinking about your nutrition. Let's go with a question from Byron. Byron says he's an ultramarathon runner, relatively new to, but using and committed to a high-fat, low-carb diet. And the way he classifies high-fat, low-carb is under 50 grams of carbs a day. He says, UCAN looks like exactly the thing I need to take my performance to the next level. My question is this. Assuming I can't run 100 or 150 miles by taking in only UCAN, what high fat, low carb foods would be best to eat with UCAN so that I can keep a steady energy flow and have the least chance of getting an upset stomach? So, Seth, there's sort of two parts to that question. Why don't you address the aspect of the other foods that work well with UCAN? And, I could share a couple of examples with Byron about what some of our other ultra runner folks have done using solely UCAN as their energy source.
Yeah, I mean, we have people, a lot of our ultra runners are doing, he's on a high fat, low carb diet, so they're choosing things that aren't going to raise blood sugar. So that'll be protein and fat sources. People use a low sugar protein bar. They do almond butter packets, peanut butter packets, cashew butter packets. People sometimes do coconut butter. These are all things to coat the hunger in the stomach, because you might feel some hollowness in the stomach, especially when you're an ultra runner. So those are recommendations, those kind of nut butter packets or a low sugar protein bar.
And similarly, if you can stomach Byron, nuts, actually chewing on nuts while you're running. We've had some triathletes tell us they've snacked on almonds or walnuts or cashews. So like Seth mentioned, yes, stuff that don't raise your blood sugar, protein and fat is always a good thing to do. And we'll speak to the first part of your question, which was, can you well, you said, assuming I can't run 100 or 150 miles by taking in only UCAN. So, what's interesting is we've had a lot of ultra athletes. A woman named Linda Quirk actually set the record this summer for the 60-year-old age group for the fastest completion of the Badwater Ultra Marathon. It's 135 miles. Took her, I believe, 44 or 46 hours. So she's out there for a very long time. And for Linda, 85% of her calories over that 44-hour period of time was chocolate UCAN. So from an energy standpoint, I mean, certainly when you're out there for a really long time, 100 or 150 miles, there may be some desire to put solid foods into your system for hunger. You may want to have some solid foods for variety, but from an energy standpoint, if you could tolerate it, I guess mentally having the same thing, you can certainly get all the calories and energy you need strictly from UCAN. At that same race, Meredith Delars, she was the third overall female finisher at Badwater, and same deal for Meredith. I mean, 87%. They had that, and the reason I have these numbers is because Bob Siebehar, who's an Olympic sports dietitian, he was one of the first folks to tell us that the SuperStarch, which was created for Jonah, would be very effective for athletes and for endurance athletes. And Bob is the nutritionist for Meredith and Linda, so he was tracking exactly what they had at Badwater. And so with Meredith too, 87% of her calories were chocolate UCAN. She was having a packet every 2.5 hours. And in both Meredith and Linda's cases for those ultra runs, they used the UCAN with protein because they didn't want to eat too much solid food. So they were using the UCAN with protein as a way to help curb the hunger in the stomach. We had Gene chiming in, who is an ultra runner as well. He said, I used primarily UCAN at the Umstead 100-mile run in April, just a few gluten-free tortillas with almond butter in addition to UCAN. So whatever you choose as a food source, we say protein and fat, Byron, because you're using the food to help with hunger, not to help with energy, if that makes sense. So we got another question from Donna. Donna wants to know, is taking 2 packets 30 minutes before the race the same as taking one 30 minutes before the race and another packet 2 hours into the race? Go ahead, Seth.
So, can you hear me, Byron?
Yeah, go ahead.
Byron, can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay, so the main thing is that, if you have 2 packets before, it can give you maybe an extra hour, right? So a lot of folks feel that if a packet lasts them, 90 minutes, maybe 2 packets last them 2.5 hours. But, a lot of folks do like having, a serving before and a serving at mile 10 before a 20-mile run because they like physically knowing that they're going to have something to keep them going. And that's more that mental aspect of having something at during your run rather than at all before. So you have to experiment, and it's personal preference, and you can really try it out. But a lot of people do feel, that they like 2 packets before, they don't have to worry about it. And some people do feel that having it 30 minutes before and then another serving halfway through does last them longer. So we've heard both sides. So it's so individual depending on the person that you can try it out in both ways to see what works best for
Yeah,
you.
and Donna, that's really the the I think what it really comes down to based on feedback we've heard is the preference of whether or not you enjoy having something to take during the run, or if you're one of those folks that would rather just do your fueling previously and just get out there and go and not have to worry about fueling. So think about it from that perspective as well. We're going to go from talking about ultra running to James has a question. Should I use UCAN for shorter workouts, shorter runs? Seth, I know this is a topic close to your heart, so I'm not going to steal your thunder.
Right. So definitely, a lot of people, that's why he came out with tubs. And, if you have a packet before, which, to give you guys some perspective, 1 packet equals a scoop and a half in our tubs. And I can't tell you how beneficial it is to keep your blood sugar steady for shorter runs, maybe higher intensity runs, or simply, a 30-minute workout where you're just doing, 4 miles. I personally do 100-yard hill sprints, and it might be a 40-minute workout. I might do 4 or 5 100-yard hill sprints because it takes around 10 minutes to walk down the hill after you've blasted all the way up. And, it's amazing how you can just keeps you steady, and it allows you to maintain higher power output and not let your energy let down. And so, if you choose to have the packets before, what's great about having a little bit more before is that after the workout, your blood sugar still stays steady. So you can kind of wait an hour to have a meal, or you don't have to feel you don't feel ravenous afterward. So it's definitely good for for some runners, for a 30-minute speed workout, the same serving lasts them for a long run. So I can't recommend it enough. I mean, a lot of folks use UCAN for circuit training and strength training workouts, and they might just strength train for 45 minutes. So they have a packet or a scoop, 20 minutes before as they start foam rolling and warming up and doing some stretches. So I can't recommend it enough. It's really it's just this UCAN feeling you get when you're training.
And depending on the length of the workout, some folks have found that if they're out there for 30 or 45 minutes, that they may only need to take half a packet to fuel them throughout their workout. But one of the things that I think is a misconception is when people think of here 90 minutes to 2 hours of steady energy or steady blood sugar, they sometimes interpret it as, oh, I only need to take this when I'm running or working out for 90 minutes to 2 hours. But if you think about everything that surrounds a workout, when you're done working out or exercising for 45 or 50 minutes, oftentimes it doesn't end there. And when I say that, I mean you still have to either drive home from the gym or you may have if you're running in the morning, you may have some responsibilities, whether it's showering, getting ready for work, whatever it may be. If it's in the evening, you may have to drive home, cook dinner. So you don't want to be completely wiped out after a tough 45-minute run or workout. What personally I've found is a big benefit from UCAN, and what we've heard a lot is that people find that they're able to, because UCAN stays with them after a tough workout, they're able to shower and get to work and then have a breakfast at work and not feel completely wiped out the rest of the day. Or there was a woman, Sally, in Texas, and she was telling me that when she was training for a marathon, her family, she has 3 young kids, they used to get so frustrated because she'd go on her Saturday morning long runs, and then the rest of the day she'd just be completely done for, because she was using gels. She'd have those blood sugar swings, and then she'd just want to nap all day. With UCAN, she's found that she's taking it, 2 packets before, 1 packet during for her 18-mile run, or excuse me, 1 packet before and 1 packet during. She's finding that her blood sugar is much more even after, and she wasn't feeling as run down. She was able to go home, cook lunch with her family, and enjoy the afternoon with her kids. So there's just things like that to consider, that you still want to have that steady feeling of energy to carry on with the rest of your day. A lot of us we're not pro athletes. We don't have the luxury of doing a workout and then just being able to spend the rest of the day doing nothing else and relaxing. We have to go to our day job, take care of the family. So definitely from that standpoint as well, very beneficial for your shorter workouts. JH wants to know if UCAN can sit in a water bottle for future drinking, as in 2 hours later, or does that in any way dilute the results?
Yeah, that's
So,
fine. You can have for up to 12 hours outside of a fridge we usually recommend, and keep it in a fridge for maybe 24 to 48 hours at most. And that's our general recommendation. So you can definitely mix it 2 hours before. That's fine.
James wants to know, and Seth, this is a perfect one for you as you've been at a lot of the Lifetime Fitness gyms talking to the trainers about exactly this. James wants to know about how you would suggest implementing UCAN into a daily diet as a meal replacement and for something to help with weight loss and weight management.
So there's two interesting things, right? The first one is that you can have UCAN simply in between meals, in between breakfast and lunch, and in between lunch and dinner. And that helps because it keeps blood sugar steady in between those meals. So when you approach those meals, you're going to eat based on true physical hunger, not because your blood sugar is dropping and you're eating to raise your blood sugar back up. And that means you don't crave the chips or rice or other carbohydrates. You also, anytime you use carbohydrate from any other carb or food, you freely burn fat rather than store it. So in between meals, you keep your body in that fat burning mode. That's one way. And we had feedback from one endocrinologist who was talking about how, when he was tracking calories, and he had told us that his patients who were using UCAN in between meals, when they did that, their calories were drastically lower than days when they didn't have UCAN in between their meals. So that's the first way to use it. And you can simply use, our fruit-flavored version in between those meals, or some folks even add their own protein powder if they want to make it more like a little bit more calories from the protein. The other best way to use UCAN, your father has experience with this far, and is simply having it for breakfast. Folks use our protein-enhanced version. They might add a tiny bit of nut butter and make a shake out of it. I mean, I'm a dietitian, so I throw spinach into my shakes. Or they simply have that a serving before as their pre-workout breakfast. I know your dad was doing that before he did some work on the elliptical, and what did he lose, 19 pounds?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. So, my father's, who's type 2 diabetic, he was having a bowl of cereal in the morning before he was spending 45 minutes on the elliptical. And he was doing this 5 times a week. So, working 45 minutes out, 45 minutes a day, 5 times a week, it's a pretty good clip for the average person. And he just wasn't seeing the results. And, if you take a look back at what we're talking about in the beginning, he's having that bowl of cereal before his workout. Well, what's happening? His blood sugar is going up. He's spending most of the time on the elliptical burning through that excess sugar in his blood. Then post-workout, he's feeling low. He's feeling the need to snack. He's doing this in the morning, so he's feeling the need to snack before lunch. And then suddenly you can see why he's not seeing too much results. So what he did was he started replacing that morning cereal with a packet of UCAN. Now, 3 months later, he didn't even tell me. I go home to see him, and he's looking like significantly smaller than he did previously. And he ended up losing 19 pounds over 3 months, simply making that one change in his diet. Just replacing that morning cereal with the packet of UCAN, he found that he was able to work out at a higher intensity because his energy level was more stable, and he found that he wasn't as hungry after his workout. And Seth, what you talked about, I think folks understand this, but you talked about when with the endocrinologist having UCAN in the middle of the day, finding that folks' caloric intake was going down. And so, how does the steady maintenance of blood sugar affect the cravings or the desire to eat? I mean, what's the science behind that?
So as I was talking about earlier, glucose is the only thing that feeds your brain, and it's fascinating because in your hypothalamus in your brain, you have glucose sensing nerve cells. So blood sugar regulation, it's minute to minute. So when blood sugar drops below that range where you feel steady, you're gonna want something to raise you back up, and that's when you look for the sweets and the sugars and those things that we like. And it goes back to that kind of thing. Anybody who's had a healthy meal before, where you have lots of proteins and veggies, you feel that fullness in the stomach, but you might feel that hunger in the brain, and that's because your blood sugar is not where it needs to be. So, that's really what it is. When the brain is happy, when glucose is entering the brain at a steady and even rate, not too much at once. And that's the beauty of UCAN. So, when you have UCAN as a breakfast shake, whether it's the carbohydrate portion of that shake. So some folks, they have, an omelet for breakfast, but on the side, they'll have a lemonade UCAN the way you might have used to had orange juice for breakfast. And the combination of the omelet curbs that hunger in the stomach, and that UCAN keeps them steady to start their day strong and not have any cravings mid-morning, and be able to go into lunch with more of this feeling I could eat, but I don't have to. And that's the way you want to feel at your meals, not, oh my God, I can't wait to eat. The other thing is that when your blood sugar is steady before a meal, you're likely to eat slower. You're not going to overeat because you're not eating to play catch up. You're eating to feed the body, and there's a difference.
So
So
we are sorry, Seth, to interrupt you. I just want to quickly. We are at the hour mark. We're happy to stick around for another 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions folks may have. But I do want to let everyone know as a thank you tonight. We are extending a 10% discount to our online store, and we actually just launched a new flavor. So for those of you folks that are familiar with UCAN, that you may probably be very excited about this. It's a new vanilla cream flavor. It's enhanced with whey protein, the highest quality whey protein isolate that's available, and it's naturally sweetened with monk fruit extract. So this is different from our old vanilla, which was using sucralose as a sweetener. This new vanilla is naturally sweetened with monk fruit extract, which is a 0-calorie sweetener. Has got a fantastic sort of a smooth, creamy taste to it. So it's been very popular, and right now it is only available in tubs. It will be available in packets in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But for anyone who wants to pick up a tub of the vanilla cream or any of the other flavors of UCAN at 10% off, you can go to our online store and enter the code VCREAM for 10% off. So I'm going to post that in the chat. It is just VCREAM. You enter in the code at checkout, and that will give you 10% off. And then one more thing is if any of you folks want to reach out to either Seth or I, you will be getting a follow-up from me after this webinar with a recording of the webinar and just a little bit more info. So you'll have my contact info. Seth, of course, is our dietitian, a fantastic resource. You can reach him at ucanrd@ucanco.com. So I will put that one in the chat as well, ucanrd@ucanco.com. But I want to take a moment to look at this chart, which has been up on the screen for quite a while now. And we're comparing the caloric intake to UCAN versus other forms of sports nutrition, your sugar-based or maltodextrin-based nutrition. And as you see with the UCAN, with roughly 100 calories, it's going to fuel you for that 90 minutes to 2 hours. Now, if you were to have, say a Cliff Bar before, and then you were to sip on, a bottle or a bottle and a half of sports drink throughout your 2 hour run, you're up to 350 calories. With many of the folks who are taking a gel before, another gel around the 45-minute mark or 35-minute mark, another gel a little over an hour in, another gel roughly an hour and a half in. You see how you can quickly get up to 400 calories for that same run. So I think this really highlights the point that UCAN and its ability to maintain blood sugar is what's going to keep you feeling that steady energy for so long instead of putting you through that cycle of highs and lows. And Dr. Kathy Eckel, who's researches the human metabolism at Yale, she really says it best. And if you look at that quote on the bottom, she says it's really the ability to maintain blood sugar that sustains energy levels. So from a fitness standpoint, UCAN is huge because it does that without putting lots of calories on board. It's really beneficial because you can make every calorie count. So when you're taking a gel every 35 to 40 minutes, you're doing it because you're trying to stabilize your blood sugar. But previously, the best way to stabilize blood sugar was to just keep taking in calories every time you went low. With UCAN, we're allowing you to stabilize blood sugar, which, nutritionists recognize is the key to having steady energy. We're allowing you to do that with far fewer calories because UCAN releases so steadily and does it on its own. Seth, is there anything that you want to add to that point? I don't know what happened to Seth. He may or may not be with us still. Seth, are you with us?
I'm here, Varn.
All right. So on that idea of steady blood sugar, we've hit it home a
I'm
lot.
here,
But
Varn.
any other tips that you want to add for folks? Looks like most of the questions that were asked were answered. But do you have any other general tips that you want to let people know? It looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Seth, but we'll get him back here in a moment. But
I'm back, Varn.
all right, there you are. So, as we get ready to wrap up, are there any general tips you want to let folks know in terms of using UCAN and how to think about using it? All right. Well, you know what? We will let Seth be for now. And so, in summarizing it, Seth looks like he's having a little bit of technical difficulties on his end. But in summary, the best way to try it if you haven't tried out UCAN is to take a packet or a scoop 30 minutes before you run. Figure out how long it lasts you. The first time you use it, just take it before you run, get out there and go. If you're used to taking gels, you might want to carry a gel in your back pocket as insurance, just so you have something there with you. But very likely, if you're going under 2 hours, a scoop and a half or a packet should be all that you need. Now, if you are wanting to trial it during the run, again, figure out how long one serving, one packet lasts for you, and then you want to trial your additional serving 30 minutes before you need it. So if a packet lasts 2 hours, try that next serving every 90 minutes. You can mix it in a bottle or you can mix it in a small flask with as much water as you'd like. Definitely the trying UCAN post workout. We didn't really even talk about that actually. And if we can get Seth back in here, let's see let's see if we can try to get him back in here just to quickly touch on UCAN for recovery. Seth, let's see if we can get this to work. Are you there now?
I'm here now, Varn. How we
All
doing?
right. So let's talk about UCAN for recovery. What would be the benefit of using UCAN post workout?
So you're going to keep your blood sugar level steady, which is huge because after workout, anybody who has cravings or overeats because their blood sugar is dropping. The other thing is it keeps your body in a fat burning mode as you keep your blood sugar steady, and that's huge because during the workout you've stimulated all this fat burn. The last thing you want to do is shut it off during the best time to burn fat was after the workout. That's the reason why folks call after running and after a workout the afterburn effect because the metabolism is higher and the body can take advantage of better burning fat, and UCAN is finally a carb to keep you in that state of burning fat. If you had the classic orange juice and protein shake, bowl of cereal, rice and chicken, those carbs are going to enter the bloodstream rapidly, and the body's going to say, hey, all that fat that could have been potentially burned after the workout will simply recirculate back to the fat cell, and you've lost the opportunity for that fat loss effect after workouts. So it's huge to keep you in a fat burning mode afterward.
Those of you who are with us in New Jersey on Monday night, and you may have had a chance to meet Kim Conley, who's the Olympian for the 5,000 meter team last year in London. And Kim talks a lot about how lean she's gotten when she replaced her post workout chocolate milk with UCAN and with the chocolate UCAN. And she speaks about it from two perspectives. So, chocolate milk is something that is commonly thought to be good for post workout recovery, and from a protein standpoint, it will give you the protein that you need to repair your muscles. But typical chocolate milk may have 15 to 20 grams of sugar. So what Seth just talked about, when you're getting that spike post workout, you go into that sugar burning mode right away. So you're certainly not gonna get leaner drinking chocolate milk after you work out. And the other thing is that what Kim was experiencing was 30 minutes after she drank that chocolate milk, she would just be starving because again, she's putting her blood sugar through that high and low that we've discussed so much today. So when Kim replaced her post workout chocolate milk with chocolate UCAN, she got as lean over the last year as she's ever been in her life. And she really said, it was definitely in part because she was burning more fat after in that post workout period because her blood sugar was stable and her insulin was low. And it was also because she just didn't have that same level of ravenous hunger because her blood sugar wasn't declining rapidly like it was with the chocolate milk. So what she would eat a meal, an hour and a half or 2 hours later after a tough workout, but she found that she was going into that meal with a much more controlled level of hunger. So she was able to make much smarter choices. And that's really, after a tough workout, it's so easy to feel like you deserve or you can eat whatever you want because it's just a natural mental feeling to have. You feel like I just put my body through this really tough period of time. I should reward myself. And you can often help you get rid of that feeling of wanting to reward yourself because you just won't have those same cravings. When you have cravings is when you think I should reward myself. But when you're stable and you don't have that decline in blood sugar, you're able to be a lot smarter about what you put into your body. Seth, we talked a little bit about how we recommend folks trialing UCAN, using it for long runs, using it for shorter runs. Looks like most of the folks who had questions had them answered. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here for the night?
No, I just think the main thing is, if you use UCAN consistently, you have it scoop. We came out for the tubs really, so you could have customize a smaller serving size, a scoop before 5 mile run. Use a scoop and a half or 2 scoops for longer runs. And it's really this amazing feeling you'll get of steadiness and evenness. And at the end of the workout, you're not going to feel drained. And that can be for a teacher who's a lunchtime runner, or that could be someone after a 10 or 12-hour workday who wants to get a run in. As the famous Gary Brimmer would say, it's great after an 8 or 10-hour workday. So, that's all I have to say, Varun.
So thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. You will have ways to contact either Seth or I, so we'd love to hear from you, hear your feedback. For everyone who asked questions, thank you very much. We really appreciate your participation. And remember, the code VCREAM, it'll be active today and tomorrow. You can get it, or actually, sorry, it'll be active through the end of the week. So you'll be able to get the vanilla cream tubs, brand new flavor, really a premium product with a very high quality protein. You'll be able to get that at 10% off. You'll be able to get anything you'd like at 10% off, even if you'd like to try out another flavor of UCAN. So big thanks to everybody, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. Take care.